Welcome to All Abilities Network Podcast. Now, here is your host, bilingual certified life coach, advocate, and the founder of All Abilities Network, Alvaro.
Hi and welcome to All Abilities Network. My name is Alvaro and I'm very happy to be with you tonight. Before I introduce our guest, I'm very excited to have him on. I want to say, like always, thank you so much to people listening in the United States. We have listeners in New York City, people like Ed Plumacher, like Lou. I'm sure Carrie is going to be listening as well. And probably Frank Sinner might be also listening. We have listeners all across the U.S., all across Canada, in Latin America, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia. We are all over the place. And this show is new, my friends. This is only the second show we're going to be posting very soon for you guys in Christmas time. So, well, what can I say about our next guest? Well, he is a musician. He happens to be blind. He's an African-American person. He's very talented. And the only thing I can say is that I'm very excited to have him on. That's for sure. Rod, thank you for being with us. Oh, I was forgetting. His name is Rod Clemmons. Everybody. Oops. I'm so excited. I was forgetting his name. I know Rod understands my excitement. I love music, my friends. So, Rod, it's so nice to have you on.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for asking me.
It's my pleasure, Rod. And can you tell us in a nutshell, who is Rod Clemmons?
Well, I am born and raised in Arkansas. I attended the Arkansas School for the Blind in Little Rock. I graduated from there in high school in 1980. And then while I was there, I was working with a wonderful music teacher who also happened to be one of the music teachers and the choir director at the School for the Blind. Her name was Jean Boyce. And she entered me in all kinds. I was studying piano. I started studying piano when I was 3, but I didn't actually start working with her until I was in junior high school. But she had me in all kinds of piano competitions all over the state of Arkansas and different parts of the region, like in Arkansas and Tennessee and Texas and Oklahoma and Missouri, stuff like that. She entered me into this national workshop for gifted and talented high school piano students at the University of Texas at Austin. I believe that was the summer before my senior year in high school. And between that workshop and 2 of the competitions that I did in Arkansas when I was in high school, I was offered 3 scholarships to go to 3 different schools. But I ended up going to the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music in Bloomington, Indiana, which is arguably, well, it's been called the best university school of music in the world. And I was so fortunate to be able to go there. And actually, that came about because in the 1950s, a little guy named Jimmy Ross was coming to the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, where I grew up. And my dad was a professor and also assistant football coach. And Jimmy Ross got a football scholarship. And but unfortunately couldn't play football to save his life. So the head coach wanted to kick him off the team, but my father would not let that happen because Jimmy had excellent grades, but both his parents had passed away. His grandmother was raising him. And if he lost his scholarship, he wasn't going to be able to go to school. So Daddy somehow kept him on the team so he could finish school. And this is in the 1950s. Fast forward to 1978. Now little Jimmy Ross is Dr. Jimmy Ross, who is the financial aid director at the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music.
Wow. That's amazing.
And he finds out that my dad has, his youngest child who is visually impaired, is looking to go to school, and he's like, "Well, send him here. I'll give him a complete free ride. You all won't have to worry about a thing. In fact, I'll even give him some money every month to go to school." And I had so much fun. It was great. I loved it. We had wonderful people that came and spent semester sabbaticals with us, like the great Leonard Bernstein,
Oh,
the
wow.
wonderful, the conductor Robert Shaw, Leontine Price, Beverly Sills, the wonderful film and television score writer
Oh,
Henry Mancini,
wow.
who was responsible for a lot of things like Pink Panther and
Yeah.
Peter Gunn and, oh God, who knows what else. Then on to the pop scene with people like Manhattan Transfer,
Wow.
the Pointer Sisters,
Oh, wow.
the group Chicago,
Wow,
Barry
wow.
Manilow. I mean, we had all kinds of people that came and worked with us, and it was truly a phenomenal 4-year ride. And then I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and lived there for about 3 years, and got into pop music. My degree program, by the way, in school was classical piano. But when I moved to Louisville, I started playing with bands and in clubs and things of that nature. And that's how I learned how to perform and entertain and be a personality and all that stuff. And then after 3 years, I moved to New York in 1988 and jumped into different bands. I played with a progressive rock group that was pretty well known at the time called Manhattan Project. And we toured all over the country and did all kinds of concerts and recordings and whatnot. And then I started my own production company around 93 and my record label in 96. And then I, started producing all manner of, mostly independent recording artists. But, by this time, the independent music scene was becoming its own industry. So, when you start talking about people like, oh my gosh, what's her name? Oh, good grief, I can't think of her name. But she had a label called Righteous Babe Records. And I'm sure you would know her if I could think of her name. I don't know if she's recording anymore, but
Okay.
because I haven't really heard of her doing anything in quite a little while. But I mean, she was getting like radio airplay out the yin yang with absolutely no major label promotion or anything like that. And so I just kind of, imitated what she was doing and ended up getting into Billboard magazine and being reviewed by other publications like Black Radio Exclusive and producing all kinds of things, including children's albums and pop rock projects. I
Wow.
did a wonderful contemporary country album for this group called Teeter Gray. I did 2 Latin pop albums for this company that I don't think exists anymore called Millennium 3 Records. This was back in the 90s. And this one artist named Jay Manuel, who was sort of like a Luis Miguel type. And
Uh-huh.
and then this other girl named Nikki, she was wonderful. They were sort of grooming her to be a new Selena. This was around 96, 97. And I worked with her. And then I played with a bunch of different people like Speech from the rap group Arrested Development
Uh-huh.
and all kinds of different people. I mean, it's been great. Then I finally released my own album after working for everybody else and their mother for years, and 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 that album actually brought me a Grammy nomination for Best R&B Album and Best R&B Song.
Wow.
And the song, which is the title track of that album, which is called "What's Up, It's Me," climbed into the top 10 at number 3 of the Hot Adult Contemporary Radio chart. That was back in 2018. And then I produced
Wow.
another album for a contemporary gospel artist named Dan Kenneth.
Uh-huh.
And his album is called From the Heart. And that single also climbed into the top 10, same chart at number 4. So we were
Wow.
constantly competing. Every week I would move up one and he would move up one, and I would move up five and he would move up five, and so on and so forth. And so when we toured in 2000, between 2017 and between 2017 and about the beginning of COVID, when everything had to stop, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We were able to go and perform all over the country and do radio and television interviews and lots of publicity. And now I'm, working on some other projects, and, I guess I should stop so I could let you ask a few questions.
That's a good point, Rod, because yes, I am getting even more excited. But for our listeners, if you hear Rod talking, I mean, Rod, seriously, I mean, when I hear you talking, our listeners may be thinking, okay, we understand why you're so excited to interview him. He's done so many things, it's unbelievable. And Rod, let me start by asking, many people in the world, whether they have a disability or not, whether they are blind or not, they want to become a singer. They want to become someone important in this wonderful industry. Now,
Right.
you've been all over the place. Granted, you were born very talented, and that's a reality. That's just not you saying it. It's the reality. And you have taken advantage of your gift, but you have worked hard as well. Of course, it's not just like you say, I'm talented, so let it be. No, you go for it. You work.
Thank you.
So no, it's true. But the question for you, Rod, is what do you say to people listening who are blind, vision impaired, or has another disability, and they say, "Oh, I want to be the next Rod." So, what should they do in terms of entering this very competitive world and industry of music? And the other thing is, anybody can become a singer, or do you believe, well, anybody can be a singer because on YouTube anybody sings, but to be a good one, it requires something. What do you say?
Yeah, well, definitely. First of all, as far as it, as far as I'm concerned, and with the experience that I've had, and the lots and lots and lots of very talented people that I've been around for years, this is a gift it's a gift, and it's either given to you or it's not. So there are people who are okay as singers or musicians or whatever, and then there are people who are very, very gifted, and then there are people who just don't even think about it, and that doesn't mean that they can't do something else. Everybody has a gift of some kind, but
Right.
not everyone has been given the gift of being able to sing or play an instrument or whatever. Just like, I wasn't given the gift of being a brain surgeon, but there are people who, I mean, that's what they do, and they do it extraordinarily because that's what God gave them to do. So I think that first of all, you have to be honest with yourself, and because a lot of people think they can sing,
Right.
especially singing. Playing instruments, you don't see too much people who just go, oh yeah, I can play the guitar, I can play the keyboard, I can play the piano, because that means you got to get up and do something. But singing, a
Yeah.
lot of people think, oh, I just open my mouth and bam, there it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it does not work that way. It just doesn't. I've heard so many people, because I voice coach as well, and I've heard so
Oh.
many people that's just like, sweetie, no. No. Look, you have other things. You are wonderful at yada, 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 yada. But singing, no, I don't think so. And, but so you got to be honest with yourself. And that also means you really, if you don't know, if you don't know whether you can or not, that number one kind of makes me raise an eyebrow. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can't. It just means you may not be aware of what you can do. But once uh, you are aware of it, and that also might mean that you need to get with somebody whom you know can sing, and you know they can. You know they can just run circles around whatever, and ask them, look, does this sound good? Do you think that I can do this? And just say, be honest with me. I mean, be just painfully honest, whatever that
Right.
is. If it's good, if it's
Right.
bad, just tell me.
Right. Right.
Once you have that and you know that, and if you can do it, now comes the issue of understanding the industry and not being so caught up in I want to be a star and all that stuff, because that's a bunch of bull.
Mm.
You What you want to do is serve the music as a performer. You want to bring the music to the people. Your first concern is making the music speak to whoever is listening to you, whether that is 3 people or 3,000 people. That's one of the first things we learned when I went to Indiana University. I was a performance major. And one of the first things we learned as performance majors is I don't care if there are 3 people sitting in front of you or 3,000 people sitting in front of you. Give the music the same attention. Make those 3 people, 30 people, 300 people, 3,000 people, make them get up and walk away and go, my God, that was incredible. And if you do that, 3 people will bring 10 more, and 20 people will bring 100 more, and 200 people will bring 500 more, and so on and so on and so on. Especially these days, because now with technology is basically nothing but an electronic version of word of mouth, which is a good thing. So you want to do that, and you want to capitalize on that, and you want to make sure that every time you do something in front of people, it's excellent. You would pay to hear you perform if you had to do that. And if you would do it, then you know that other people will do it too. And when you give everything you got, people, they know it, they see it, they sense it. And then from there, you try to figure out, obviously you need to find producers if you can't produce yourself,
Right.
and writers if you can't write for yourself, and create material. I produce and write for myself, and for others, but I can do it for myself. So I don't have that problem. But there are lots of people that I've worked with who sing wonderfully, but can't produce and they can't write. So there's where I come in. In fact, right now I'm working with another singer named David Whitley, who is a phenomenal vocalist, and
Oh.
he's from DC.
Uh-huh.
We met in New York, but he now lives in Germany.
Oh.
He went over there in '96 to do a Stuttgart production of the Broadway show Miss Saigon,
Uh-huh.
and just never came back. I mean, he built a glorious career over there,
Huh.
and he hired me to produce a contemporary gospel album for him over there about 15 years ago. The
Wow.
album did very, very well. I've done 2 other things with him, and now he's doing another project where he is doing a whole remake project of songs from Donny Hathaway and Roberta Flack. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I'm producing that for him. Right now, he's over there doing Tina the musical. He's doing the Stuttgart, Germany production of Tina. And
Oh.
but he doesn't write, but he sings his head off. So, he doesn't write and he doesn't produce. So he knows that's what he needs. So he comes to somebody that can give him what he needs. So when you know that you could do what you could do, and also know what you can't do, and then go looking for that. And when you find what you need and you're comfortable, and it's like a marriage, you just trust everything that
Right.
they do, then you put it together, you go for it, you get it mastered for broadcast, you go to distribution companies like CD Baby that will help you get it into all of the digital music service providers, the download stores, the streaming audio, because you make money from streaming audio as well as an artist and a writer. But see, all those things are the business side of things that you need to know. So, I mean, we could we could be sitting here until tomorrow talking about
Yeah,
all this.
yeah. No, I
But
know, I know.
that's what you need. You need to know all that stuff so that, and see, if you know that, that's going to keep you. It's going to keep your feet on the ground. It's going to keep you from going, oh, I'm going to be a star and all that junk. And now it's fun when you get to the point where you go and I remember I was doing a show in a city and I was getting a lot of radio airplay, and I started doing the title track for my album, What's Up It's Me. And as soon as the intro started happening, I heard somebody in the audience, it was a big old audience too. And I heard somebody in the audience, they were like, "Oh my God, that's my jam." And I was like, "Oh, that feels so good."
Right, 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 right.
But
Of
it takes a
course.
lot of work to get to that point. So,
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
but once you're there, go ahead and enjoy it.
Rod, this is going to be a powerful interview for our listeners. I love music and I need to take advantage having this guy on. So I have some questions that are not written right now, but I have to ask.
Hmm.
Now, I'm fascinated with music since I was a little kid. I'm going to tell you some of my favorite singers of all time. I would like your opinion if I could.
Hmm.
Um, all right, so um, how to say this? It's hard to say to someone with your degrees and experience and all of that. I know nothing about music other than I like it, but Frank Sinatra, to me, his voice is unique.
Hmm.
But I would like your opinion on something. There was like a ranking of the best male voice of all time, and I do believe Freddie Mercury won. I would like your opinion in terms of, is it possible to compare the voice of Michael Jackson, Frank Sinatra, and Freddie Mercury, for instance?
Wow, those are very different styles of performing. I mean, they're all great, but they're just very different. Not yeah, the styles are different. The approaches are different. Freddie Mercury definitely had a very strong and powerful
Huh.
voice, and also a very good ear. Um,
Oh,
I mean, he really had a good ear, could harmonize the daylights out of anything.
oh.
I mean, he could harmonize things that just you're like, whoa, what did you just do? So I wish I had known him because I would have loved to ask him. Look, I hear what you're doing and everything you're doing sounds great. Do you know what you're doing? Because I do, but I don't know if you do. I mean, I know you know it sounds good, but I wonder if you know what it's called. But he's very, very good and very strong. Sinatra is smooth and
Right,
yeah,
right.
he's more of a jazz crooner kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Powerful in his own way, but
Right,
definitely smooth.
right.
Michael, now this is just my opinion. Michael's
Yeah,
voice in
yeah,
general
yeah.
is wonderful. I think Michael was much better younger, um, because he had not messed around with his facial structure. When you
Right.
start changing your nose, that changes the sound of your voice.
Oh, that's the
Yeah,
first time I
because
hear this, Rod.
oh yeah,
Oh,
because you can't. Well, for example, now I don't know how true this is, but it totally makes sense, and some of it must be true because she never changed it. But Barbara Streisand's nose is rather prominent.
yeah, that's true.
uh,
That's true.
the reason why she never changed it because it would change the sound of her voice. And so
Oh,
she has such a unique and incredible voice that she's like, no, I'm not changing the shape of my nose. I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. And of course, the rest is history. So,
wow, wow.
um, and with her being a Broadway baby, I mean, she's doing or did, all kinds of
Yeah.
live theater things in the
Oh, yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
And when you're doing stuff like that, you've got to project to the back of the room. I mean, yeah, you do have a body mic on, and there are hanging mics from the ceiling and all of that, but it's not like a recording where the mic is right in your face and,
Right.
there you
Right.
are.
Right.
So Michael, as he got older, I mean, he still sounded great, but the thing about it is, like, you could tell as he got older, it almost sounded like he was having a hard time maintaining notes, breath wise, because
Wow.
his note was different, because he wasn't breathing the same. So it totally changed. Like, I had a recording engineer I worked with who, he fell or something like that and injured his nose, and they ended up having to basically reshape it. And so the next time I talked to him, which was about 6 months later, he called me, and I said hello, and he goes, "Hey, Rod, it's Josh." And I'm like, "Who?"
Oh, wow.
And he said, "It's Josh." And I'm like, "Josh who?" And he said, "Josh from, so and so studio." And I'm like, "What? Wait a minute,
What
wait a minute, wait a
happened to
minute. This
you?
doesn't sound like," yeah, exactly. And he goes, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I had to have surgery on my nose. They had to restructure it because blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "My gosh, you sound nothing like you used to. Nothing. Absolutely nothing."
Hmm?
So, that's kind of what happened, I think, with Michael. But I mean, all three of them are wonderful. They're just wonderful in different ways.
This is fascinating, Rod, I have to say. Now, I have to say, one of my favorite songs of Michael Jackson is She's Out of My Life
Mm-hmm.
from Off the Wall,
Mm-hmm.
one great album. I hope
Yes.
listeners can take a listen to that. That voice at that time was unbelievable, I think.
Oh, that
So
album was incredible.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's a love it. Um, Now, Whitney Houston. What do you say about Whitney? We miss her music. That I mean, he could have done so much more, but he died young enough. But oh boy. Anyways,
Oh,
what do you say about her voice? Yeah.
she was wonderful. It made me sick when I saw that interview that she did with Diane Sawyer. I don't
Yeah.
know if you saw that. And she could barely talk, and it just, oh God, it killed me. I mean, her voice was just. Mm, mm. Now talk about a gift. That is a gift. That is an absolute gift. I mean, that is just, you don't. That's a person. She either has it or she doesn't, and she did. Um, and uh, I actually heard. I don't remember which song it was. It was one of the ballads that she did, and I got to hear the raw vocal recording without the
Oh.
music. So all you
Oh.
heard was her voice,
Yeah.
and it was unbelievable. It was just like, oh my gosh. No toys, no tricks, no reverb, just this flat, bland sound, and she sounded phenomenal. And just absolutely amazing. I'm just, whew. And usually, when with singers, especially if you know how to sing correctly, using your instrument and your body and breathing properly and all of that, and you don't abuse your body with smoking and drugs
Mhm.
and heavy drinking and
Mm.
stuff like that.
Right.
The older you get, the better you sound. A lot of people don't realize
Oh.
that.
No,
But
I didn't.
oh my gosh, well, if you think about it, like, I heard a concert with Streisand on PBS about 4 or 5 days ago. I don't know when this was recorded, but it was done not that long ago, like maybe about 2 years ago or something like that. So,
Okay.
Streisand is about 80 something now. So she was 79 or 80 at that point. And I mean, her voice was just as crystal clear and gorgeous, and like when she was
Oh,
20. It was
really?
ridiculous. Another singer who sounds almost exactly like she did 40 and 50 years ago is Shaka Khan. I mean, just
Oh,
like herself. But
Wow.
and she had some issues, but now she has done away with all of that years ago, with the drugs and all of that. She
Right.
got rid of that stuff years ago.
Right.
So,
Right.
and a lot of times when you do that, um, the whatever damage you might have done can reverse itself. And that's what was happening with Whitney Houston. If you ever heard her last album, there are some
I did.
songs. You
Yeah.
heard her last album? Yeah.
Yes, I
There are
did.
some songs where she sounds almost exactly like she used to years and years ago. And then there's some
Yeah.
songs where she just is like, oh boy. But so
Mm.
she was coming back, She was,
Yeah, she was coming back. Yeah,
yeah.
I saw an interview that she did on Oprah, and it was when she was coming back. I mean, the album was released,
Hmm.
and she was excited, and then it didn't take too long until she died. So what a shame, we have lost some incredible artists
Yes.
before they did it all. And I have to ask you about my favorite artist of all time, George Michael. What did
Mm.
you think about his music?
I like George Michael. I wasn't crazy about everything he did, but I did like him. And I thought he had a wonderful voice, very strong. He seemed to have a lot of control over his voice. And I liked a lot of his songs. I loved, what's that song? Monkey, is that what it was called?
Yes, Monkey from
Y-
Faith. Yeah, the
Yes,
album.
I
Yeah,
love that song. That song was hot. Not to mention, I like the rhythm.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
I, Rod, I saw him live in Barcelona in 1989 when he was doing the Faith tour,
mm,
and he was singing "I'm Calling You" from Jovetta Steele from Baghdad Cafe.
hmm.
And I'm telling you, that was unbelievable. You can find it on YouTube, the song that he performed there because it was recorded at the time.
Oh,
That was
okay.
an unbelievable performance, Rod. I mean, yeah, you know what it is, Rod. Without having your expertise in music, don't you think some musicians, some singers, they don't do, how to say this, they don't, um, they could do better with certain songs they choose, in other words, because you find certain singers that you say, this song, he could do better, he could choose a better song
Right.
for his voice. And I think that for many, many artists these days. But oh well, what can I say? Oh, before I forget, Bobby Brown, he, in my view, wasted his career for our listeners after Don't Be Cruel, which I consider to be one of the best albums in rhythm and blues history, and many experts say is one of the best albums of the 90s. Um, Don't Be Cruel, My Prerogative. Um, I mean, it's a great album. It was produced by Ellie Reid and Babyface. I do
Yeah.
believe great producers.
Oh, yeah.
Um, what do you say about Bobby and what happened to his career?
I don't really know what happened to him. I think that album was great too. And he, I mean, of course, he was with New Edition for a while before he
Yeah,
did that.
yeah,
And I know that they've also done other recordings, other albums since then as a group. So, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the deal was with him. But I don't know anything about whether he had any kind of drug issues or alcohol issues. I mean, I heard that he had some alcohol issues, but I don't know
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, but I did like him, and I liked that album. Don't Be Cruel and My Prerogative and all of that. I thought that was hot. I thought that
Yes.
was, yeah, it was very, and the production, that was back when R&B music in general was really, really good.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
it spoke to you. It made you move. It made you sing.
Oh yeah.
And, you turned the radio on because you wanted to hear if your favorite song was going to come on at some point.
Oh
And
yes. Oh
especially like if you were working out, like walking on the treadmill or something like that. And you
right.
just for the radio just to see because you're going to be on the treadmill for a little while and something's going to come on at some point. But yeah, I don't know. After about well, really after that, well, no, um, the album, excuse me, that they did with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Yeah,
What was that? If It Isn't Love. I don't know if that's the name of the album, but that was the song from it, one of the songs.
I think
Uh,
the album was called Bobby, if I'm not mistaken.
no, this was the New Edition album after that.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that this is the one that had If It Isn't Love and Can You Stand the Rain
Ah, okay,
and
okay.
yeah, stuff like that. After that album, which was around 90, I guess, 91, 92,
Yeah,
something like that, I don't really remember much about Bobby Brown anymore.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm sure he was doing things, but I don't remember anything.
Yeah,
But
but you know, Rod, it happened the same to Paul Abdul, in my view. I mean, Forever Your Girl was a great album, also produced by Babyface. But then she did Spellbound, and it was nice, but it was not at the same level. And then she disappeared. So, of course, to keep that level, it has to be super complicated in music, right?
it does, and also, unfortunately, especially at that time, not so much now because labels don't have the same control over artists as they used to. Number one, and number two, you don't even have the same major labels anymore. A lot of them are gone.
Mm.
But back in that time, uh, some artists, especially if they didn't write their own material, they didn't have a whole lot of choice as to what they could do or say. They didn't have a whole lot of say so as to what they can do. They were being told what to do by the artist and repertoire people, and so they were, sometimes given these songs that are just not great, even though the vocally they're, the singer is wonderful. I mean, I've heard Shaka Khan do some things that are just like, okay, now what was that all about? And I love Shaka Khan. I mean, I would pay any money to hear her live because that woman is ridiculous. But
Right.
there were a couple of songs that she did that I was like, excuse me. But that's because a lot of times, especially back in the 90s and the 80s and stuff like that, you didn't have a whole lot of control over what you did. You were being told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now you do have a little bit more, well, quite a bit more control. And especially if you're independent. Now, of course, the trade-off is you don't have the same money machine to promote, but you can still make things happen. I mean, I didn't have a Sony Music or a Universal or a RCA or an Atlantic or whatever. But I still got this thing out and managed to do hundreds of thousands of streams on Spotify and lots and lots of performances and top 10 radio airplay and all kinds of stuff. So I mean, you got to hustle to make it happen, but you can do it. But that also means you have a lot more control over what you're doing. So you know.
Rod, before I go into other questions, I need to ask you about the level of music today. In other words, I do believe Beyoncé might be the the singer who has the most Grammys in history, and
Hmm.
uh, Taylor Swift, who has become, by the way, the Person of the Year for Time Magazine. I
Hmm.
thought artificial intelligence was the Person of the Year, but it's Taylor Swift. But my
That's funny.
my question my question is, do you think it makes sense to give Beyonce all those Grammy Awards beyond what Whitney had, or Barbara had, or Michael had, or Stevie Wonder had, or Ray Charles had? Or do you think it can be compared? Do you think the talent is very similar to those great ones?
Personally and personally, um, because I used to be a member of the Recording Arts Academy that does the Grammys, among a bunch of other things,
Oh, okay.
and it's to me, I think that at least the ceremony itself, especially what you see on television, is nothing like what it used to be
Right.
years
Right.
ago.
Right.
The Grammys used to be a celebration of all music,
Right.
and and it may go on for it may come on at 8 o'clock at night and go on until 1 o'clock in the morning, but but it was you didn't mind because you were celebrating everything from gospel to country to rock to jazz to
Right. Right.
pop to polka to whatever, and classical, everything. But now it is, to me and to a lot of people, the broadcast has become, the flavor of the month kind of thing, and
Mm.
and it just doesn't have the same celebration. Now you can still see a lot of people. There are a lot of independent artists that receive Grammy awards, which is
Yeah.
wonderful, but
Yeah.
only the industry knows about it. The general public doesn't really get much wind about that because they're not a part of the broadcast. Even though they may announce it, but it's so fast. It's like won the blah award. Next we have and and that's it. That's all you get. So I mean, Beyonce. I think Beyonce has a great voice. I think she has a very strong voice,
Yeah.
and I think that there is, you know what? My favorite song of hers is Love on Top. I love that song because she keeps changing keys and going up and up and up and up. and and I, and she's wonderful when she does it. I mean, she does not get weak. She
Yeah.
does not, she's not like, oh God, I can't do that. No, she's like, oh, you're gonna go a little high? Okay, here we go. And so, and but I do think that I would really wish to see her do things that are not that serve the music more. I'm getting back to serving the music now and not being so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you know what I'm
I
talking about.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah,
I understand.
because
Yeah.
she can do it. It's not like she can't. She
Yeah.
can. She
Yeah. I
totally can
understand.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just not. And there are a few singers today who are like that. They can, but because the mainstream industry doesn't want that, because as far as they're concerned, it may or may not necessarily sell music.
Yeah.
So they tend to just go with what they, what's going to sell, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is the dollar sign. And I totally understand that. And it does, if it doesn't make dollars, after a while, it doesn't make sense. But at the same time, I believe that you can do serious music, because there are people who are still doing it, like Mary J. Blige. I mean, that woman has really, oh my gosh, she has come so far from the 90s, and
Yeah.
she is such a different performer. And not only that, not just singing, but acting and everything else that she does. I mean, that woman has completely reinvented herself. And she was nominated for some Grammys a couple of years ago, and um, other people like her. She's still relevant. She's still doing it. Shaka is still there. She's
Yeah.
older, but
Yeah.
she hadn't gone anywhere. And
Yeah.
and yeah, it's strange, but there are so many talented people, and like I said, I mean, I never will down anybody. I may not
Mm.
like everything everybody does, and that's totally
Mhm.
understandable. There's some people who probably can't stand what I do, but but just for example, like Beyonce, I think Beyonce is extremely talented. I'm not crazy about everything she does, but I think she is very talented, and she does have a great, great voice. I will say this for her: anybody that could tour like that, uh, because Beyonce's not a little kid anymore. I mean, she's not a grandma either, but
Yeah.
she's in her 40s, and touring like that, night after night after night after week after
Yeah.
month after I mean,
Yeah.
that stuff wears on you. So you really need to make sure that you eat your Wheaties, before you get on that stage.
Oh, Lord.
So I got to give it Sister Girl got it going on when it comes to energy, okay?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But for
You're
the
absolutely
people
right.
like the Stevies and
Yeah,
all those people,
yeah,
they're just, you don't make them like that. I mean, you just don't. I wish, and they're there, but you don't see them because a lot of the mainstream doesn't allow it.
yeah,
But they're
yeah,
there. You just have to look for them.
yeah, yeah. Good point. Um, as our listeners can see, can listen, can understand, we could talk about music for a long time. I better go for other questions because I get just excited to talk about other musicians. um, so Rod, people may be thinking, okay, so Rod can play the piano. Does he play other instruments?
No, I can imitate other instruments on a keyboard, yes, but but I don't play any other instruments. I did when I was very young, when I was a little boy. I mean, piano was my main instrument, and that was the only instrument that I stuck with. But I did take clarinet for a little while. I took saxophone for a little while. I
Uh-huh.
studied flute for a little while. But just none of them I gravitated toward, and I think a lot of that is because with those instruments, you have to have other instruments to make harmony. But with the piano, you can harmonize all by yourself. So that's why I love the piano. But now I can, as a keyboard player, I can imitate drums, I can imitate bass, I can imitate, violins and violas and cellos and string basses and horns and this and that and the third. In fact, the albums that I have produced for people, when you see the credits,
Yeah.
most of the time it will say drums, Rod Clemmons, bass, Rod Clemmons, piano, Rod Clemmons, strings arranged by Rod Clemmons. And people will think, I remember one time I had a meeting with one of Queen Latifah's people. This was a long time ago.
Oh,
When I had produced an album for my ex-wife, my wife at the time. And she's sort of she was sort of a pop rock, kind of like a Sheryl Crow type.
uh-huh.
Leslie Clemens was her name, is whatever. And um, so I took her album over to Flavor Unit, and so the guy that was listening to it, he goes, "Wow, you play all these instruments?" And I just kind of smiled, and he goes, "You don't play all these instruments?" I'm like, "No." And he said, "Well, who's playing the instruments?" I said, "I am. I'm doing it on a keyboard, though." And he goes, "Well, how in the world do they sound so real?" And so I said, "Well, right after I graduated from college, I got the chance to meet a tremendous keyboard player named Isaiah Sanders. And Isaiah went to IU, before me, but he went to the same school.
Right.
His major was ethnomusicology, and I think he had gotten his master's degree. But he came back um, to speak to the Afro American Arts Institute um, on the campus, and he was getting ready to do a concert with this group that's on the campus called the Soul Review Band. And they're still there, quite popular, made up of students, and I mean, just excellent, excellent, excellent. And he wanted to borrow a keyboard, and this was a brand new keyboard at the time, the Yamaha DX7. Of course, you can't find a DX7 if you prayed about it, but but at the time, it was the thing, and I was the only one in town who had one. And so he found out and asked me if he could borrow it. And of course, I didn't want him to do that because I didn't know him. But I knew who he was. At the time, he was actually Stevie Wonder's principal keyboard player. That's what he was doing for a living.
Oh,
And he was playing and touring with Stevie. And he had also done touring and production for Christina Aguilera and Madonna and all kinds of people. And he said, "Listen, my guess is you just graduated as a classical pianist, so you don't know that much about playing keyboard, do you?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't." So he said, "I tell you what, I will come and I will spend 2 days with you all day, each day,
wow.
and I will teach you everything you need to know about
Oh,
keyboards."
Moses.
So
Wow.
I said, "Okay, fine." So I let him borrow my keyboard. And sure enough, he came. I had a little studio apartment, and he came over and he spent the whole day with me for 2 days,
Wow.
teaching me how to imitate drums on a keyboard, how to imitate bass on a keyboard, teaching me how to think like a bass player
Yeah.
and play what a bass player would play, teaching me how to use this thing called the pitch bend wheel on the keyboard, so that if you're doing a bass line, so like if you're going, let me see, dun, da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da, that kind of thing, like what a
Yeah.
bass player would do with his finger.
Yeah.
He taught me how to imitate that using a pitch bend wheel.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds just like a bass. He goes, exactly.
Incredible.
And so
Incredible.
he goes, now what I want you to do is I want you to plug your ears into all kinds of music. I don't care who it is. At the time, this was the middle 80s. So we're talking Phil Collins,
Yeah.
Bill Bailey, uh, Morris Day and the Time, Prince, Michael, Shaka, Sheena Easton, all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And he said, just listen to all these different instruments and mimic exactly what they're doing, and you will become one of the most sought after keyboard players, I promise you. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And I'll never forget him, never. I wish I could find him. He became a member of the faculty at IU about this was at least about 10 years ago, but I don't think he's there anymore, and I don't know where he is, but I'd love to find him and thank him, because please, I mean, he is the reason why I play keyboards.
Wow. And Rod, people listening may be saying, being blind or having another disability, or maybe being older, maybe in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, can you really learn how to play the piano well?
At those mature ages, probably not, but anything's possible, especially if you have the innate ability, then yeah, there is a certain amount of skill that you will develop. I don't care how old you are, but it is much, much better the younger you approach it, because you're, especially like if you're learning how to play piano, your muscles, if you're like at 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years old, your muscles are not completely developed yet. And you learn, like there's a certain way that you hold your hands on a keyboard, and there's a certain way that you position your fingers on a keyboard. And and in your 30s and 40s and stuff, it's harder to learn. I'm not going to say it's impossible, because I don't know, because I was 3 when I learned. But I have been around people who, did start to learn things at 20 and whatever, and they learned some stuff, but they only got but so far, but they did learn. And now being blind and visually impaired, no. If you have a good teacher, especially and you're young, like 3, 4, 5, 6, it doesn't matter. Because when I started studying at 3, I started working with a teacher who was a college professor at the university where my dad was. And I mean, he he told me, later in hindsight, he said, when your mother brought you to me, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But, as far as, because you could not really see my hands on the keyboard, but when I positioned your hands went right into the position naturally, like somebody had already taught you how to do it. And that's when I realized, I'm like, you know what? That's when I began to realize that's something that God gives you. You either have it or you don't have it. And, and if you don't have it, it's okay. You just figure out what you do have and work with that. But if you do have it, then, go for it and make it work. So, but yeah, the disability doesn't necessarily have anything to do with anything.
Rod, do you need to have a great memory to become a singer?
It helps. um, Especially like I know when I do concerts. Now, of course, these days, most of the time when I'm doing a concert, it's my own music. So, but even then, I have to
Yeah.
practice a bit and memorize words and stuff like that because sometimes I'll forget. But, but it's very rarely though. It's extremely rare. But now keyboard wise, as far as playing, I don't remember, especially in pop and R&B. I don't remember any time when I've ever forgotten anything keyboard wise. Um, um, but now the funny thing about it is I don't really play much when I do concerts because I dance and I like to dance. I like to move. Now I don't run all over the stage. I know how to dance in place, but I do
Uh-huh.
move.
Okay.
And now there is a keyboard that is in front of me so that if I do want to play something, I can.
Right.
Um, like the last tour that I did, most of the time I didn't play anything until I got to this remake that I did on my album of Carolina in My Mind by James Taylor.
Oh,
And when I did it, it was just me and keyboard, or like me and piano.
right,
And
right.
so I played the piano part and sang, and the rest of the band did not play with me. But the rest of the concert was, mostly up tempo stuff. And I'm dancing. I'm, moving and doing step touch routines and the hip hop shoulder
Right.
snap and all that stuff and throwing my hands in the air and all kind of, I just like to have fun. And people, and well, it's so funny. My contemporary gospel artist, Dan Kenneth, and I toured together for a while when we released our albums a few years ago. And um, the first time he saw me perform, he was like, he came up to me afterwards and he goes, "When did you learn how to dance?" He's like, "What the heck? Wait a minute." And he goes, "Hold on. I said you couldn't see. Now, how in the world did you learn how to do that and you can't see?" But
And what was your answer, my friend? What was your
I,
answer?
well, I told him, excuse me, at the time I had been working out personally with a personal trainer at New York Sports Club. And part of the workout that I would do with her was aerobics. And we
Okay.
had gotten into military style aerobics. I had gotten to the point where I was doing military style everything, aerobics, cardio, strength, all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
in part of the aerobics, she was a dancer. And so she taught
Oh,
me how to dance.
wow.
And so she would literally put my hands on her thighs, on her butt,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
on
Keep
her
moving.
waist, on her shoulders, and she would literally say, because that's the only way I'm going to get it. And
Yeah.
and then I
Yeah,
would
you
start
have a
to
point.
imitate it,
Yeah.
and then she would go, "Okay, that's good, but now bend a little bit more at the knees, spread your feet a little bit further apart, bend and bounce. And what I want you to
Oh.
do is I want you to give me some of that booty, shake that booty, chap."
Oh boy.
And she would come behind me and lightly tap me on the butt. "Give me that booty. Shake that booty." And then she would say, "Now I noticed that you're a little awkward. Your
Yeah.
lower part of your body is good.
Yeah.
Your upper part is what you act like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just loosen your shoulders and alternate going from right to left and right, left, right, then go the other way, left, and just keep moving. Move your arms, move, just do anything. Who cares?" And after a while, I'm like, "Hey, you know what? This is fun." And she goes, "Yeah. And you know what? You look like you're having fun. And if you do that on stage, everybody's whatever you do, they're gonna do it with you." And that's exactly what happened. So when I would do those concerts, and Dan told me, he said, "You know what, Rod?" And I would ask him, I said, "Well, did I look all right? I mean, I don't want to look like some
Yeah.
dingling or whatever."
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
goes, "No, no, baby, you look great. I mean, and everything you do, The audience does it with you. They mimic exactly what you put your hands in the air, they got their hands in the air. You
Wow.
snap your shoulders, they snap their shoulders. And see, I don't sit at a keyboard. I do not sit. I stand
Oh,
and I move. No, I
oh.
never sit. No. I
Um,
move, child. I burn
Ro-
calories when I perform.
Rod, this is so interesting, and it's about learning how to dance without seeing.
Right.
I know many people who say to me, I am scared to death to go into the dance floor because I don't feel coordinated enough. I don't know if I move correctly or if maybe I feel I'm looking silly. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you recommend to blind people who say, I will never learn to dance because I don't have it in me? What do you say?
Well, once again, get somebody around you that you know well, who can see, of course, whom you trust, and and just put on some music and say, look, I want to dance. I mean, you don't have to learn like, okay, this is the blah 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 move,
Yeah.
but I just want to move and dance and look like I'm having fun, and I don't want to look like a stiff robot trying to move around. And
Yes.
one of the things that was really good for me
Yeah.
was when um, when oh yeah, when I would do aerobics. After a while, you start to get winded and all of that stuff, and
Yeah.
especially if you start to get air hungry, um, you want to stop, and that is the last thing you need to do. You do not need to stop on a dime after you get to that point, because that's actually not good for your heart. So what
Oh,
my trainer would do, she would teach me before we start the routine, the workout stuff. She taught me what's called step touch, and all you're doing is you take your left foot and step to the left, and move your right foot to the left, and then step to the right with your right foot and move your left foot to the right foot. And as
okay.
you're doing that, bend a little bit with your knees and move your hips as you move from side to side.
Okay.
And then after a while, move your shoulders a little bit. And that's what she would teach me how to do, to cool down once I got to the point where I was out of breath. So that way I wouldn't just come to a complete stop. I would just cool down a little bit. And then I
Oh.
would go back to, the jogging and running and all the funny jumping jacks and stuff that she had me doing.
And
Oh
and
gosh.
and and Rod, that trainer is available.
I hope so. I haven't seen her in a long time, but she's much younger than I was. Am she's Chelsea is probably about hmm, she's probably about let me see, nine. She's like in her 30s, about 36, 35,
Okay.
36.
Okay.
Yeah. Because she was in her 20s when I was working with her.
And Rod, I have a question that comes to mind about shyness. Some singers that I hear interviews with, they say, I am a very shy person, but I transform myself on stage. You don't seem to be the shy person, but what can you tell me about performing? How do you transform into that artist?
Um, I used to be very shy.
Really?
Long time ago. Yeah, long, long, long ago. Well, not long, long, long. I'm not that old, but um, but yeah, when I was coming out of college, well, and especially because, like I said, I trained as a classical musician, so everything
All
was
right.
very foo 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 foo. But
Yeah.
and I'm studying Mozart and Chopin and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I still love that music. That's music is still my first love. But but yeah, I was very shy. But I after a while I got around a bunch of crazy people, and learn how to just kind of chill out and have fun. And I would say things and people would laugh. And I don't mean laugh at me, but laugh with me. And I would be
Right.
like, hey, I'm kind of a cool guy to hang out with. And so I got to the point where I was like, all right, I guess I'm okay. So, and then of course, as I started to perform, that's when I really kind of came into my own, because that will teach you very quickly. As soon as you get some type of reaction or response, and you get a positive response like that, then it's like, oh, well, all right, so now I know what I'm doing. And when I perform, like the only thing I rehearse is the actual music. I don't rehearse what I'm going to say or how I'm going to move or nothing. I just do it. I just go for it. I just, before I go out on the stage, I pray. Some artists need drugs and this and that and the third to psych themselves up. Give me a nice glass of orange juice with calcium and vitamin D and a couple of Herbalife multivitamins, and I'm good. And there's my energy. Now I can go for hours. And if I'm in good, cardio shape, so then I'm really good to go. I kind of noticed that, after COVID and you couldn't go anywhere and you couldn't do anything and no gym was open and on it goes. So it, took me a while to kind of get myself back in shape, but I got there. It didn't take that long, because I've been working out cardiovascularly at least most of my adult life. So
Oh,
my body is used to moving. So if nothing else, if I'm in an apartment building and all I can do is climb the stairs, then I'll just climb the stairs umpteen times
right,
a day.
right.
That's what I got to do. So I'll do it.
Rod, I remember listening to Bobby Brown, especially Don't Be Cruel, the intro of Don't Be Cruel, the first notes of Don't Be Cruel. That's I guess the producers um, work at the beginning of the song, and thinking what they do with this. In other words, a music producer like you, Rod, what exactly do you do with music, and how do you learn to become a music producer?
Well, a producer is to music what a director is to film. And, of course, for people who are sighted, um, what you see in a movie on the screen, or a TV show for that matter, is what is the director's vision. The actors, the camera angles, the sets, the colors, the makeup,
Hmm.
the costumes, all that stuff. None of that happens without the director. And
Right.
so it's the same thing musically. There's not a thing you hear in a record without the producer. And what you're listening to when you buy an album or a download or whatever, really what you're buying is the producer's vision. And so the producer is responsible for the overall sound of the recording, from the instrumentation and what's being played and how it's being played and who's playing it and how it's being sung to a certain degree. Like some producers will, I know, or I heard anyway, actually, I don't know this, but I do believe it though, because if you think about it and listen to some of the people that he has produced, you will, it'll make sense. But once upon a time, I did hear that Babyface would produce a singer, not just in terms of the instrumentation and what's being played and who's playing it and how it's being played and blah blah blah, but he will actually work with the singer and coach the singer almost note for note, verbatim, as to how he wanted it sung. Now that's what I've
Oh,
heard. I don't know that because I've never worked with him, but if you think about it, Whitney Houston, when she did "I'm Your Baby Tonight," if
yes.
you listen very
Great
carefully,
album.
that's,
Great album.
yeah, that sounds very much like something Babyface would do. Very
It's
much.
true. It's true.
Same thing like Eric Clapton when he did Change the World.
Yes.
When he was doing if I could change, that is a Babyface lick if you ever heard
That's
one.
Babyface.
And
Yes. Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. You're
So
right.
some people will do that, and that's cool if that's what they want to do, and the artists will go for it. That's fine. But
Yeah.
some producers don't. Some producers kind of leave it to the artist where the artist wants to go, but they give you the musical environment with which to work. And I do that. I let you kind of go where you want to go. I mean, I'm not going to let you sound bad by any means, but I'm going to let you kind of find your way and make it your own and do whatever. And but again, overall, even down to the way that the song is mixed, the way that it's mastered, all of that stuff ultimately is the responsibility of the producer. So for me as a producer, that usually means that I'm playing all the instruments on a keyboard, of course, except for
Uh-huh.
guitar. Like I like to use live guitarists, and
Okay.
um, I have about 5 different guitarists that I love to use, and so they come and play for me, and everything else I play on keyboards, and then I engineer it. I set up all the balances of how the instruments balance against each other, the mixes and how it's equalized, and if it's bright, if it's dark, it's mid range, whatever. And then I also oversee all the mastering, that's what is the final process before it actually is ready for radio airplay and whatever. And I don't do mastering because I don't have that expertise, or the equipment to do it. But there's a mastering engineer that I rely on, and he does an excellent job. So, but yeah, that's what a producer does.
And how do you learn to do all of those things? What kind of degree you need for that?
You don't really need a degree, but it's nice if you have one, but it isn't necessary. But you do need, the way that I learned, honestly, was just by
Yeah.
listening to different recordings and why they sound the way they sound. For example, back in the 80s, when Al Jarreau was just getting real hot,
Yeah.
he was produced by a wonderful producer named Jay Graydon. And Jay Graydon did a lot of stuff with Al, Dionne Warwick,
Oh.
some of her later stuff. Um, um, oh gosh, who else did he work with? Gad. He worked with oh my gosh, of course, most of the Manhattan Transfer stuff he did.
Oh.
And so I would listen to those things. Then I would listen to, say, a Luther Vandross recording, and a lot of times he
Okay.
produced his own stuff. So
Yeah.
when you listen to Luther, his sound, the overall sound of the recording, is a little darker and a little bit more bottom heavy than the Jay Graydon things. Jay Graydon recordings sound a little brighter and
Uh-huh.
a little bit more crisp. And so that was sort of the beginning of my going, okay, well, now I at least know one thing. I know that, producers have certain sounds that they go for.
Right.
And, just about everything that they do is going to have that particular kind of sound. And then I started learning how to identify producers and their sounds, like Arif Mardin, who basically, I mean, oh my gosh, that man produced everything but your mother. And, and I mean, Rufus and Shaka Khan, every hit they have is because of him. All the way to artists like Norah Jones,
Oh.
early James Taylor, um, Bette Midler, From a Distance. That's an Arif Mardin
Uh-huh.
production.
Uh-huh.
The whole Beaches soundtrack is Arif
Oh.
Mardin. I love that man. I got to meet him before he
Oh.
passed. Just a brilliant, brilliant producer. He was about 90 something when he died. It's been almost 20 years ago. Um, but yeah, he just was, and very humble. But I listened to him. I listened to Jay Graydon. I listened to David Foster, who is
Oh, yeah.
responsible for the Chicago comeback stuff,
Yeah.
like Hard for Me to Say I'm Sorry and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Whitney Houston and all those other, like the Bodyguard soundtrack and whatever. And that's how I learned. I learned by listening and listening and listening and listening, and then just putting my hands on a mixing board and playing around and going, oh no, I don't like that, and then going, oh wait a minute, I kind of like that. Oh wait, let's do that. And, and
Oh.
my sound tends to be a little bright, not brashy, but a little bright. But I also like to make sure that I have enough of a bottom end so that it kind of kicks your chest a little bit if you're listening to some really good, strong speakers.
Rod, listening to that device, that mix, how you call it, mixing board? You say mixing?
Yeah, the mixing board.
Yeah. What does that do? How does that work for listeners to understand a little bit?
Oh, it's so funny that you should ask that, because my parents came to visit me one Christmas, and they came into my studio. I always had studios in my home, and they came into my studio, and I was actually doing a session with this guitarist, and Mom just sat there and she looked at me, and after we were through, she goes, "How in the world do you know what to do with all those buttons? There are like 740,000 buttons on this thing." And I said, well, you know what, Mom? Actually, it's a lot easier than you think. A lot of these buttons are redundant. And I showed her, I said, okay, there are
Oh,
24 channels on this board. Each
yeah.
channel has a row of knobs above it that adjust the sound, the low end, the high end, the mid range, so and so. And each
Okay.
channel has that. So it's the same thing, it's just for a different channel. And then you have, buttons that control the amount of effects that you use, like reverb or delay or chorus or whatever you're using.
Right.
And you just kind of experiment until you get what you want. There's really no right or wrong, except if something is way too loud and it's distorting, um, or there's not enough signal and you're hearing a lot of hiss. Other than
Uh-huh.
that, but those are the extremes. Outside of that, there is no real right and wrong. It all depends on what you want to hear and how you want it to sound.
So, Rod, listening to your answer, is it super hard to become a good music producer?
It can be, but again, that a lot of that, of course, again, is the gift that you have, and then how you expose yourself. A lot of people paint themselves into a box, and they say, this is what I do, and that's it. So, somebody's a great keyboard player, and they may be the best keyboard player that walked down the street, but that's all they do. And that's fine
Right.
if that's what you
Right.
want to do, and you can
Right.
survive that way. But these
Right.
days, you got to be able to do all kinds of stuff. The more you can do, the more you'll be able to, take care of yourself financially. So most producers are musicians. Most of them are either keyboard players or guitarists. Um, but probably the lion's share of them are keyboard players. Like David Foster is a keyboard player. Arif Mardin was a keyboard player. Um, Luther relied on Skip Anderson, who was his main keyboard player. Stevie is a keyboard player, but a lot of his stuff is also produced by I just said his name. Lord help me. The guy I talked about a little while ago. Anyway. uh, anyway, he's a keyboard player as well. And he's most producers are keyboard players. So it's, because they're the ones that are more exposed to harmony and variations of instrumental sounds and things like that. And so they tend to gravitate toward stuff like that more freely.
How
Isaiah
do
Sanders.
you?
That's his name.
Oh, I say yeah. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. All right. Good memory. um, how do you classify Quincy Jones?
Oh gosh. Can you? No, just kidding. Quincy Jones is a brilliant producer, an amazing musician, um, and um, he knows how to produce on several levels. Quincy, I don't
Oh,
think plays a keyboard. I know he's a horn player. I want to say he's a trombone player. I'm not
hmm.
sure about that, but I know he plays horns, I believe. But Quincy is very adept at knowing who is the best person to do what, and then he knows how to surround himself with those people, um, and ask them for what he wants, and um, and he knows how to get the best out of those people. But he is a fine musician and also composer. Oh my gosh. Uh, Man, that guy did some serious film and television stuff. Good grief. Ironside. I don't know if you ever heard the theme to Ironside.
Yeah, of course.
That's some
Oh,
crazy music. I'm like, what kind of chord is that? Every time I
yeah.
hear
I
the theme
didn't.
song, I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, I didn't know he did that.
Yeah.
And Rod. He produced two albums that I love that I bought back in the 80s and early 90s. One is "L.A. Is My Lady" from Frank Sinatra.
Oh, okay.
That's a great, great album.
Hmm.
And the other one is "Back on the Block."
Ah,
Um,
yes.
yeah, where is "Secret Garden," which I think is a masterpiece in my view. I love that song.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great album. On that album I also loved there's a song in there called Doing It. You remember that one?
Yes, doing it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It
with
has so much richness of voices and different sounds. It's very alternative, if I wish, compared to other things going on at the same time. When I listen to
Oh
that
yeah,
album,
well,
I say,
because it was
this is
all
different,
yeah, it
Yeah,
was all a cappella. Everything was done, like it was Take Six, Bobby McFerrin,
yeah, yeah,
um
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan. Oh my gosh, Lord. I think that was the last thing that either one of them did. And Saida Garrett. Oh, whew,
Yeah,
that
it was.
thing was just
I'll be
crazy.
sure it was Ray Charles with
Yeah.
"I'll Be Good to You." Yeah,
Yes, Ray Charles and Shaka Khan. Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was a great album.
Rod, I know you write your songs. Not so many artists do that. How did you learn that?
Well, again, listening to a lot of other songs and songwriters and um, styles of songs and um, being exposed to a lot of different classical compositional styles. There's not that much difference in terms of the composition of the song versus a classical piece of music, except for the fact that the classical piece of music might be a little more elaborate and longer. But the setup of it is about the same. And I mean, I'm generalizing it extremely, but yeah, that's pretty much how I learned how to do it. And then I just listened to a lot of people, a lot of different people, so that I don't end up sounding like any one person. And that's how I learned.
Now, you're also a music director. Can you tell us briefly about what is that?
A music director is a person who is in charge of a live concert situation musically. So I have worked with several performers and I have put their bands together, rehearsed the bands. A lot of times I'm playing keyboards with them. and I guide the bands in and out of songs and stuff like that, so that the performer doesn't have to do anything but just show up and sing. So, I take all the guesswork away from the performer, and so they can relax and just get into what they do, and that's what a music director does.
Rod, how old are you to do so many things, my friend?
How what?
How old are you? What's your age?
I'm actually 200. Don't that sound really good for 200? Just joking. No, I'm not ashamed of my age at all because I feel good. I just turned 61 almost 2 weeks ago.
Is that so?
Yeah.
But your voice sounds so much younger.
Thank you. I had somebody. I did another interview today with a different group, and it was a Zoom thing, and some of the people were totally blind, and some of them could see fairly well, so they could see me, and they asked me the same question, and so this one girl goes, "What? You are not anybody 61 years old. I don't even know why you want to lie like that."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I am. I just turned 61. It'll be 2 weeks this Monday." And she said, no. I would think maybe 40, maybe, if you're lucky. Probably more like 36, 37. But
Yeah.
61? No. I'm like, well, my ashen goatee and all that stuff, it's a little gray. And she goes, yeah, but the gray doesn't make you look old. It makes you look sophisticated. But you don't look old at all. But and she said, and I've seen pictures of you, performance pictures with all that colored in, and it's black, and that's when you really look young. You look like you're about 33, 34 at that point. And so, so when I do any kind of visual professional thing like a concert or pictures or a television interview or stuff like that, I always keep my facial hair colored black.
Now, Rod, I like your sense of humor. So another question that comes to mind is, I understand you have your own record label, and what do you do with that? It sounds pretty cool to have your own record label, right?
It is. It's a lot of work, and of course, everything ultimately falls on you. So, if you're going to make something, if something's going to happen, you got to make it happen. So, you're responsible for getting the project promoted. I don't do the promotion because that's a whole other job. So I would hire, like when Dan and I had our albums out and our singles were being promoted to radio, I hired radio promoters to do that. And then you hire publicists who will get you into, magazines and e-zines and on television programs and things of that nature. And then you have a booking agent that will help you, set up shows or whatever. Some of the things I could do on my own, especially if they were smaller club venues, like, 400 and 500 seat venues and stuff like that. But anything bigger, you would usually need an agent or whatever. But the videos that we did, I hired a promoter for that. So you do a lot of hiring of people to do your, to be your arms and legs. But at the end of the day, all the responsibility falls back on you.
Now, Rod, you have to tell me and tell our listeners about this article or something that came up recently saying that you are considered one of the top 21 best blind and visually impaired artists of all time, with Ray Charles, Stevie, and all those greats. Who said that, and how do you feel about that honor?
Oh, I was very honored to be included in such an incredible list. I mean, especially with Ray and Stevie, Raul Midon. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Yeah, Andrea Bocelli.
Wow,
yeah. Some jazz greats too. Oscar Peterson, I forget some
Oh,
other.
okay. Rod, Oscar Peterson was blind?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know.
Yep.
Wow. Wow, wow. Because, he's one of my uh, father's favorite musicians of all time, but
Oh,
I'm sure
wow.
he doesn't know. I'm sure he doesn't know. And Jose Feliciano, another one, right?
Yeah, he was another one. And then another jazz performer, Diane Shore,
Uh-huh.
and Ronnie Millsap.
Uh-huh.
And then there's some other older blues performers that I wasn't that familiar with. I know their names, but I don't know their music. But yeah, it was very much an honor to be a part of that. And I was a part of another list like that about 5 years ago when my album was coming out, and a family friend um, posted about it on Facebook, and that's how I found out. I was like, "What?" And so, and I went on the list, and I went, "Holy cow, there I am!" How did I do
Wow.
that? But yeah, it really is amazing to be a part of something like that, because these are fine musicians, and they have certainly made many contributions to
Yes.
pop music that will go on for probably as long as the world moves.
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
to be nominated for the equivalent to the Academy Awards of Music, the Grammys, how did it feel?
Oh, that was wonderful. It was absolutely fantastic. Like I said, I used to be a part of the Academy. I'm going to get back into it in the new year.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah. But it was great. Especially to be in the company of just unbelievable performers. And um, I remember when, let me see, wait a minute, they changed their name. They're not called this anymore. Lady Antebellum. I don't know what they're called now.
Oh,
Um, but they changed the name, with all the other uh, 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 representations of um, what's the word I'm trying to say? Representations of the Civil War. There we go. Uh,
uh-huh.
and so so when you hear antebellum, you think of homes and
Hmm.
structures that are in the Carolinas and Virginia,
Hmm.
um, and that part of the country. But when um, all of the racial unrest started happening again in the early 2020, 21, 22, all that stuff. They decided, along with a bunch of other groups, to change their name. And I don't know what they call themselves now. But when they won their first Grammy, they were completely independent. Um, and that was about 12 years ago, I think. 13 years ago. 13 years ago. And I was very proud. Oh, and the artist I was trying to think of, who was so ridiculously successful as an independent artist before independent artists were successful independent artists, is Ani DeFranco. I don't know if you ever heard of her,
Oh, maybe
but
I have. Maybe I
huh?
have.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Sounds
Yeah,
to
but
me I have heard her. Yeah.
she, like I said, I don't know if she's really doing a whole lot of recording now, but around like 93 up until about maybe 2008, 2009,
Hmm.
she was releasing all kinds of albums and performing. And for the longest time, she um, did not get any radio airplay at all, but she was doing so much performing that she was building, a following via word of mouth like that. But then she started getting a lot of AAA radio promotion, and that's how she really began to get really big. And then she created her own record label called Righteous Babe Records. I don't know if it still exists anymore, but and I think she's won a Grammy. I think. I'm not sure
Oh,
about that. Yeah, I think she did. But yeah, it's a process, you know. Honestly, uh, I mean, it's not that difficult to get into the process, but it's another one of those things like the lottery. You got to be in it to win it.
yeah,
So you know, you got to be in the academy. You have to be well, you don't have to be a member to be nominated for anything,
right.
but you can nominate yourself. You can vote for yourself if you want to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and 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 then of course, you know, the more unfortunately, to a
Uh-huh.
degree, it is a popularity contest because if people don't know about you,
Yeah,
then you're not going to be voted on. But
yeah.
you are voted on by your peers. It is not a
Oh,
fan-based popularity contest like, you know, some other awards.
okay. Yeah.
So other producers, other artists, other writers, especially in your genre. So like if you're R&B, then other R&B producers, writers, artists, they're the ones that are voting on you. And
Uh-huh.
so it is, you know, indeed an honor to think, wow, was probably voted on by somebody like Shaka Khan, my goodness, or Mary J. Blige, or even Beyonce for that matter. You know, I mean, you know, somebody like that voted for me, and they don't know me from a can of paint. I mean, they may know what I look like, but and of course they know what I sound like if they voted for me. But and now it's much
Oh.
easier to do that because now they have portals where you can set up links to your music, whatever you
Mm,
wanted, whatever you want to be
mhm.
nominated. You can set up portals and links to those particular recordings, and anybody in those genres can click on those links and listen and vote. So I mean, you know, anybody that's a voting member, of course, and then you have a certain criteria to be a voting member. So and you have dues every year. It's not crazy, but it's like, you know, $100 a year. So it's not insane, but it is an honor. It is truly an honor.
Rod, I have two last questions for you. The first one is you have achieved a lot of things in your life. Is there anything missing that you say I need to get this before I retire or before I can say, I did it all or most of all I wanted to do?
uh, hmm. Well, now that I'm starting into, you know, getting into this holiday movie and doing the music for the movie and film scoring that, and then Dan and I are working on a half-hour cartoon series through the same production company, and I'll be doing the music for that. I would love to get into film and television scoring, kind of like what Henry
Oh,
Mancini did and Dave
wow, wow,
Grusin and
wow,
people like
wow.
that. That would be so much fun. Um, but you know what I would really love to do is to be in a position where I could just, if somebody calls me today and says, "Hey, Rod, the Orchestre de Paris is doing a Maurice Ravel festival at the Champs Elysees Theater next week in Paris. Want to come?" And I would love to be able to go. Sure. When's the first concert? And just go there, get a hotel room at the what is that? At the Grand Hotel, and
Yeah, the Rock Hotel, yeah.
yep, hit the Champs Elysees every night, and go to the concerts, and go to all the little bistros and all that, and just chill and drink some French wine and have a good old time. And then maybe the following week, somebody says, "Hey, the Berlin Philharmonic is doing a festival of yada yada yada," and and just travel around and listen to classical orchestras. I'm an orchestra person. I love ensemble. I love orchestras. I love classical choral groups. You know, I love it. So that would be fun too. I mean, that's kind of a pastime, but I would love to just be able to do that without even thinking about it. So, of course, today not only is that a monetary thing, but these
Yeah.
days now it's you have to consider safety with all the stuff
Yes.
going on.
Yes. Yes, this world is nuts, my friend. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
exactly.
Um, So tell us about that holiday movie you are cooking.
Yes, it is called A Genie for Christmas.
Oh, nice.
Genie is a nickname for this beautiful teacher, music teacher we had at the Arkansas School for the Blind. Her name was Jean Boyce,
Oh,
and everyone called her Jeanie. She was the general music teacher for elementary students, and then she also directed the choir there at the school, which was made up of junior high and high school students. And then she also taught piano privately, and I was one of her private piano students. Um, I was also in her choir, and I also had her in general music. So I had her as a teacher on some level from the time I was in second grade until I graduated. And I absolutely adored this woman. I would have married her if I could have. I mean, she just was amazing, a brilliant musician, and also the Pied Piper of that school. Jeannie, um, the superintendent used her and her choirs to draw attention and financial support, both public and private, uh, to the school, like a lot of universities use athletic departments to do the same thing.
uh-huh.
And we would perform for the state legislature. We would tour and go and perform in public high schools all over the state. And when we would do finished concerts and try to get on the bus, those kids would, run after us and follow us around like the Partridge Family or something. And uh, I mean, just she was just phenomenal. So I went back. I stayed in touch with her. We became very, very good friends while we were teacher and student. And then definitely once I graduated, we remained friends. I would always go and see her whenever I would go home for holidays. I called her at least 2 or 3 times a month. We kept in touch with each other while I was in school. I used to have her salivating when I would tell her Leonard Bernstein was coming to work with us.
Oh,
And I mean, she was just brilliant, just wonderful. And I went back to the school to see one of the Christmas productions that I mean, her Christmas productions were second only to maybe Broadway shows. And I mean, she had us as blind and visually impaired kids doing all manners. Talk about dancing. Oh my gosh. That
oh,
woman had us dancing all over the place. And she would choreograph
wow.
things and organize things so that the kids that, could not see at all would be near those who could see better. And then those who could see better were near those who were, basically legally blind. I mean, they could see pretty
Right,
much everything except they couldn't drive. And it just looked incredible. It looked like we were all, doing our thing, and it was wonderful. And of course, the choirs were fantastic, and she always had us doing, out of the way arrangements of traditional Christmas music, and and then some Christmas music that you never heard of, and whatever. And her husband was the director of the Hall High School band, which was a public school there in Little Rock, and he his bands were, I mean, they sounded like symphony orchestras. They were just incredible, award-winning ensembles. And so this movie is loosely based on, it's not a biopic, but it is loosely based on her as she would put together one of her signature Christmas productions with the students in the school. But then there are two uh, segments of drama going on. One is this new student who has come to the school and is not necessarily tickled about having to go away from home to this school, and she and Jeannie become very, very close as a result. And then the other thing is the home drama that Jeannie was actually having when I was a senior in high school, and she and her husband were going through a lot of major issues, and it was really nasty.
oh,
And that's how we grew even closer. And she survived, and she did it. I mean, it was great, but it was tough. Boy, was it tough for her. And and she was able to turn around and help me through my own divorce. And so but that's what the movie. But she comes through, and you will. When I got the script back, I was so excited. I laughed, I cried, I clapped, I cheered. Um, it'll make you do all this stuff. It'll make you mad for a couple of minutes, and but at the end, it'll truly give you, the Christmas feeling like you haven't had since you were a kid. And it's not one of those whoopee, it's Christmas time, but
Yeah.
it's a beautiful story. And
Oh,
it's called A Genie for Christmas, where they're pitching it around now. The actors and writers went on strike for the better part of the last
yeah,
part of this
yeah,
year.
yeah.
So they have just been able to start pitching it to major movie studios and television and cable networks and streaming companies since maybe late September. So they've got quite a bit of interest going on now. And so it'll probably be picked up. It could be picked up before the end of this month. And then once that happens, there'll be a budget green lighted for it, and then it goes into production with all the actors, and they put together, all the movable parts: the director, the costume people, the makeup people, the set designers, cinematographers. I mean, by the time you see a movie, at least 200 or 300 people have had something to do with it.
Wow, wow. And you're gonna do the music, of course.
Yeah, I'm doing all the music to the movie.
Oh,
So,
nice.
and hopefully that will be ready to be released. Hopefully it will be in release this time next year. So,
Wonderful.
yeah. So maybe you and I'll be talking again as this movie is now out, and you
Yes,
know,
yes, we have to, and for our listeners, because it's been such a powerful talk and interview. Before the interview began, I was talking to Rod, saying, "Okay, this episode is going to be posted on Christmas time," and I said to Rod, "Would you care to sing a little bit for our listeners, any Christmas song, a little fragment of any Christmas song you like?" And he said, "Well, why not?" And so uh, before I say thank you, Rod, for everything, because it's been wonderful, and you are great as
oh, thank you,
a person to interview. You are great, I have to say.
thank you.
Um, I want to say to our listeners, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year 2024. I hope it's
Yes,
going to be a really good year and healthy for everybody everywhere. If you want to be on All Abilities Network podcast, you can email me at lowvisionbureau@gmail.com, or the new email, it is allabilitiesnet@gmail.com. So this is Salvador saying good night, and I'm going to leave you with Rod, and that's all I'm going to say. Thank you, Rod. God bless you, and Merry Christmas.
oh, thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Oh, one day soon we all will be together if the fates allow. Hang a shining star upon the highest bough, and have yourself a merry little Christmas now.
You are a Grammy winner to me, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Merry Christmas and good night,
Sing that.
everybody.
Yes.